Hey everyone, welcome to the Industry Show. I'm your host Nitin Bajaj, and joining me today is Sumantra Sengupta. Sumantra, welcome on the show.
Thanks for having me, Nitin. It's good to see you. And it's good that we've stayed in touch for it's been 14 years, 13 or 14 years.
It
So
has
it's
been
always good to stay connected.
likewise, and it's our pleasure to have you here.
Thank
So
you.
let's get started with who is Sumantra.
Yeah, that's it. I wish I could I'll go through a simple biography because I've listened to a few other folks. In my heart, I guess I've always been a quant, and over my career, I've been in the US for just around 33 years. Did grow up in India, grew up in Delhi, and I did spend 2 years in Bombay, even though I tried to avoid mentioning that because those of us who grew up in Delhi probably
Yes.
never adjust to Bombay, right? I mean, you're from Bombay. But I was in Xavier's Bombay for a couple of years. And then I came here, wanted to study math, applied math. So I got my first few degrees in applied math and then had a bit of an aha moment where I realized that that was probably not my passion, much as I enjoyed quant. So then I pivoted to B school and went and got my master's and then my doctorate in somewhat of quantitative side of business, and then just continued my career more as I would say a lifelong learner, and then over the years have just been more of a business problem solver, and that's what I continue to do about 27 years in my career now.
And I know you've had a ball and adventure through that. So tell us about EVM Partners.
EVM Partners is officially this month in its 12th year of operation.
Almost
Um,
15.
uh, yeah, it's and I have to I'll say I'm surprised that I've kept it going. It's a firm I co-founded after I had spent time with probably three or four different mega branded firms where I was a partner, vice president. And then I realized that a couple of things that I always just wanted to work more for myself than for other folks. And I wanted to really work on specific type of business problems. And so I launched the firm, and the firm we do work in really two major segments. The traditional advisory segment, and their clients more often than not come to us when they're having significant cost reduction needs, or if they are trying to figure out how to grow the top line in more of a global sense. So that's one side of the business. And then over the years, we've done a fair amount of turnaround and restructuring, which has also then led to me taking on several, probably three different interim CEO president roles as the work continued, where the client would ask you to continue to see the entire turnaround and restructuring. So those are probably the two segments of business. We've been fortunate. We've served clients, of course, in the US, in Middle East, North Africa, both Eastern and Western Europe. And I was fortunate to also do some work in Asia Pacific, just under the EVM umbrella. And today morning, I was counting how many distinct logos we have served. And I kind of counted up to 24 and then I stopped.
Wow.
So we've served about 24 logos over the years, some over multiple years, some, on small projects, but it's been about 24 different logos that we've served. So I thank everybody above me for the journey we've had so far.
That's really awesome. And I know serving a different set of clientele, pretty global set of customers across the, as you would say, the food chain, right? Uh, I'm curious to know what's the biggest challenge you've faced.
Um, Biggest challenge, I'll break it into its biggest challenge in terms of project that I took on.
Sure.
Um, uh, Global multinational agriculture company is owned by one of the royal families in the Middle East. Amazing opportunity that allowed me to take a business that was set up with joint ventures all over the world to make it a global brand, over $1 billion. I ended up running that company for as the interim president for about 2.5, was engaged with them even at the board level after that, traveled almost 200 nights a year globally, because we were setting up a business that was based on food security all over the world. Um, and and much as it was not good for work-life balance, I will tell you it was probably the most fun I've had professionally, because there was something happening in some part of the world. I had 11 operating units in some part of the world, and I was always based in LA. So that was quite a rewarding. I mean, every project is rewarding. I have to say that,
Yes.
right? However, if I had to point to one project that probably stretched a lot of the skills that I had accumulated over the years, that one did. Professionally, these days, I think the biggest challenge that we face as a boutique firm, right? Because that's what I've always been. I've always remained a very high touch, high client service based boutique firm. Um, is the bigger firms, there's a fight that goes on in terms of them creeping more down the value chain, us creeping up the value chain. They obviously have a bigger bench, a bigger brand, especially because I often go up against the very established brands, both at the strategy level as well as the former Big Four. I'm former Big Four as well. Um, Recruiting and retaining talent is very, very challenging, especially these days, because everybody wants that shiny rubber stamp object on the other side, right? And for us, it's more, what kind of work are you going to be doing? Now, it's easy for me to say that now because I built my career on the backs of those brands. So I can fully understand what the younger group of people are going through. But for a smaller firm like us, that continues to be a bit of a challenge.
Makes sense. And despite what one would have thought, COVID has only accelerated that challenge, I would imagine.
Yeah, COVID actually has, I mean, last year, when, I mean, there was a time when everybody just came to a standstill, right around March timeframe. And then people started figuring out how to go about whatever is the new norm. I don't even know what the new norm is, but the talent war didn't become any easier. It actually became tougher. I was chatting with somebody recently where they said they did a LinkedIn post and they got 600 applicants. And I was like, well, that's good, but how many of them were truly qualified applicants
Right.
versus people just, and so I think the war for good talent has always been there. And with COVID, there was a group of people that said, it's best not to jump ship at this point,
Yes.
because longevity sometimes can help. So why not see this through as much as we can? So that did, make an impact.
Yes. You mentioned about the challenges of kind of starting to hit as you're going up the value chain, hitting the big fours and other companies with deeper pockets, and then on this other end, the war for talent. In terms of, obviously, as you do these things, as you go out and get bigger and better clients, I'm guessing there is also a wide opportunity or set of opportunities that are opening up for you. Can you tell us about maybe the big one?
Yeah, for us, given, I mean, I I own the firm along with my wife. Actually, she owns the firm. I just happen to this thing. But what we have decided is, we stay close to our core, uh, and I grew up in effectively what would be called the products industry sector. So any company that makes, moves, or sells a product, and then an associated service, right? Um, that's the space we play in. And that's a big space, food and beverage, durables, ag, retail, e-commerce, life sciences. So there's a lot of room in that. For us, given we have served clients that have gone in terms of ownership, they have ranged from family-owned, private equity-backed, and even venture-backed, and of course, public companies. So we've kind of served the gamut. And in terms of what we are looking forward, going forward, and especially in, I would say the next 12 to 24 months, we see a lot of activity in what I would call the upper mid-market. Think of it as, I think somebody recently said, how about the Russell 2000? I think that's an interesting measure. I hadn't quite thought about it as, everybody talks about the Fortune 100, Fortune 1000, but then there is those gazelles, the ones who are going to be the next set. And I think Russell 2000, at least in the US, does cover an interesting segment for us. So that's, kind of the slice. The mix of projects will probably continue to be the same. Lately, we have picked up some work in ESG space, the environmental sustainable supply chain. I wrote my 5th book on risk management last year. It was based on an article that I wrote in August or July of last year. And people are beginning to talk about risk management or risk adjusted supply chains. They're trying to understand what it really means to have a supply chain that should have risk levers built into it, or risk management levers. So these are some, I would say they are kind of some nice offshoots of work that we have always done. And in the industry space that, at least me and some of my colleagues, we know quite well.
Yes. And I think it's, maybe you can comment a little bit on this in terms of, we're kind of getting in that era of super specialization, right? And this plays to your strengths.
So, I grew up as a specialist before I became a generalist.
Yes.
Right? I grew up in what is today affectionately called supply chain. When I started doing it, we didn't really have the term supply chain. You had procurement, logistics, manufacturing, customer service, and then over time we started, knitting the whole thing together. So I was always known as the operations or the supply chain, person. And then over the years, I moved into becoming more the industry person, but with always my base has always been that supply chain. So the deep specialization has always worked well for us. And that's how we tend to win. We tend to win, we tend to win on 3 levers. One is very, very strong element of customer service. Second, domain expertise. I'm just a huge believer that whatever domain you're going to go after, in our case, it's the products industry vertical and growth, efficiency, and management, you must be able to walk in and people have to say, okay, they've been there, they've done that, and that's why. And then the third is, if you say you're going to deliver something, deliver it and over deliver. If you say you're going to position a team X, then, let's see how close to X we can stay. And for a boutique like ours, when we say X is who will show up. Yes. It's not going to be, X for 10% and then another whole bunch of people for the other. I mean, there's nothing wrong with it, but for us, we just sell based on the type of problem. And you'll notice one thing I didn't mention was price. Because I know being competitive on price is the norm. That's table stakes.
Yes.
I don't compete on price. And so, I mean, if somebody wants to, take the margin hit, more power to them. There's plenty of other things to hunt for, and plenty of people that will want our services for the very fair rates that we charge them. So that's been how we won.
Yep. Makes a lot of sense. If you were to step back and look at your journey so far, is there a kind of a lesson learned or a success story you're really proud of?
Um, I think um, if I look at somebody that worked with me and has worked with me across probably I think I met him probably right before I met you. Maybe so I've known him for about 15 years, right? Um, I think he always points out that um, I tend to reinvent myself probably every decade. That doesn't mean I get bored. It just means that if you're not learning and evolving yourself and adapting, then what are the chances that a client will want to adapt and grow with you, right? And we've been fortunate. We've had clients that we maybe I haven't done business with them for the entire 12 years I've been with EVM, or I've set up EVM. But the fact is, I stay in touch with my clients on various. So I think the ability to reinvent and not stray too much from the core of what you stand for, but be able to adapt has helped me as I've moved across industries. And in fact, I've written a few articles over the years of comparing industry one to industry two. And those articles have tended to be the most well received, because so often we go so deep in our silo that we forget that there are best practices we can borrow from other industries, right, in the same sector. So I have probably enjoyed that. And I would say, other than that, it's just been, I've just worked with some very good people, people that have mentored me, and now I mentor a whole group of people. That's been very rewarding. Um, and I will say, just over the years, the ability to maintain relationships, has been something I've always enjoyed.
Yes.
I think if I look at the way I built my network and maintained my network, there's people that I think I started working with, say, in 95, 96, that I'm still connected with. And that's what, like 25, 26 years later. And it's just been, for me, that's been very rewarding.
And I can tell you, it's been, having been in this relationship for 14 years, it's been very rewarding for me. So
Wow.
I've learned a lot from you, and I've tried to walk in your footsteps and try to reinvent myself. And and I use the word try very mindfully. So not there.
I would say I have enjoyed watching you do little pivots, and especially the last one that you did, the one you're in right now. Not too many people go down that route, and I'm glad you're doing it. And I wish I had opportunities to do that kind. But I've enjoyed watching how you've pivoted, including going and getting your own doctorate at Pepperdine.
Yes.
I think when we met, you hadn't quite finished. I think you may have just enrolled
Yes.
in your PhD. And so, yeah, we all kind of chart our own course, right?
But it's good to have, as they say, walking on the giants of the shoulders, or the shoulders of the giants, and I'm talking to one of them. So thank you.
Ah, that you're very kind to say that.
No, it is true, and it had to be said. So let's switch gears a little bit, and since we are already on the topic, talk about you, and please share some one-line life lessons with us.
One line life lessons. So those are always tough, because
Hmm.
they're not. I will share them with you, but
Yeah,
they shouldn't be indications
sure,
of me all the time, right?
of course.
Because the first one that I always, and I share this with people across. I've spoken about this. there's a statement that I took from either it was in his book or I believe it may have been in his autobiography.
Hmm.
And Andy Grove, the founder of Intel, um, he said, "Only the paranoid survive."
Yes.
Um, and it has stayed with me, Nitin, for years. I mean, I forget when he wrote it, when I read it, but I will say that that one sentence has resonated with me.
Mhm.
Not that I live my life in paranoia, but the fact is, um, you always have to realize that there is someone else building a better mousetrap
Yes.
than you. I mean, I mean, that's just the reality
Hmm.
of that whole reinvention, right? So that's been something that has always stayed with
Yes.
me. The second one is something that I picked up and I used very effectively as I was globetrotting for the helping build the multinational company. I believe Peter Drucker may have said this at some point where he said, "Culture eats strategy for breakfast."
Yes.
I believe and I might be paraphrasing, but I think that's kind of what he said. And that has been so true.
Hmm.
You can have the best laid strategic plan, and if the culture fit is not there, the chances of you executing that are probably actually going to be zero,
Yes.
right? Um, then there's a few others, one I use. Sometimes, sometimes people are not amused when I say it because, especially if I'm saying it to an overzealous CEO. CFOs actually enjoy this when I say it. I always say hope is not a strategy.
Yes.
you know Especially when you're sitting there and everybody is dreaming the next unicorn, right? I mean, look, trust me, there is always that unicorn out there, but for every unicorn there are many non-unicorns,
True.
and so we can't have everything being a unicorn, and everything can't be that classic hockey stick, right? Which is, well, we can't sell anything, but then we hope we will just quadruple our revenue
Yes.
in that fourth quarter, right?
Of course.
And I always sit back and I go, wow, man, that is probably going to be a tough one,
Yes.
right? The next one is something that lately I think is true. Not when I first started my career.
Mhm.
Um, when I first started my career, um, I've always said, and my one-liner for you is that loyalty is a two-way street.
Hmm.
Um,
So true.
if I'm going to expect, when I started my career, a while back, um, you were taught that you had to be loyal to the cause, you had to be loyal to, your firm,
Hmm.
and I remember a very senior Ernst and Young partner who recruited me, and then I grew and then became a vice president there because we were sold the year I made it over the finish line, whatever is that finish line, right?
Yes.
I remember him telling me that, and he had been a 30-year partner. Um, and I asked him, I said, so what's the reason for your success? He said, it's very simple. He said, take care of your family first, take care of your clients second, and you do those properly, the firm will take care of you. He
Nice.
goes, don't ever put the firm's interests ahead of your clients or your family. And a variation of that, I would say, is the fact that loyalty is a two-way street. We often look at resumes, right? I look at resumes, people hop around. Yes, now there is an element of impatience that is in today's generation, but I'm also not sure that element of loyalty, that sense of camaraderie, is really there today. I
Correct.
think it's more a series of transactions, I think. And I'm just using my own experience.
Sure.
I'm sure there'll be others who have been on your show who will say, no, that's not true. We all have our own experiences that teach us, right? So that's something that I've maintained, and particularly maintain now, is that it has to be a two-way street.
Yes.
And then I think the final one is always something I leave people with. It is, and it's probably, I may have read it on a bracelet or something. It just says, think different.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that has served me quite well. You know, it's just it's fun to you don't always have to be the naysayer. You don't always have to be the what is it? What do they call it? Devil's advocate.
Yeah.
You know, that's not. However, you need to be able to go in and take a slightly different perspective, and even if it is just a hypothesis,
Mm-hmm.
doesn't mean it has to be true, but at least be able to think different.
Yes.
And I've enjoyed that over the years, and I still do. I still read a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Um, in fact, right now I'm reading a book which it's called The Code Breaker. It's the the recent one,
Mm-hmm.
and then I've got another one lined up already to read. And every time, and these days I probably I'm more picky about what I read, but when I read it, I still expect to pick up a few nuggets
Yes.
here and there from every book, and that just shapes my thinking. So I think that's probably the last one is think different.
And that's a powerful one. Right? Uh,
I'm sure it's on a bracelet somewhere. If not, yeah, I'm pretty sure that it's on a bracelet, but it's worked.
yeah, I remember. I think it was a marketing ad campaign that started back when Apple was trying to, come out with a slogan and stuff. I think
Really?
yes,
Was it the classic, not the classic Apple ad, right? I mean, there was that classic one from the early '80s, I think.
yes.
I remember, and it may
I
have
believe
been.
that was the one. I
Was
believe
it?
that was the one. I think so. Yeah, but I'll go back and look. It's
Yeah. Then that's who they gets credit for it.
yes. But
So yeah,
sorry, the one thing we say is, it's not who said these one-liners or who came up with them, right? What's important is who adopted them.
right.
And if in adopting it, if you made it your own and it made a difference to you, and because it made a difference to you, it made a difference to the lives around you, right? That's really what it's about. So that's why we don't do any attributions on these. We're not trying to create copyright or any of that. It's if this one line has helped you and has the potential to help someone else, that's really what we need, right?
I will say, these are, as I was preparing for this discussion, there's a few others that I was there, and I was like, if somebody just said, okay, what are the top five? These are probably the ones I would choose. And it's work. Doesn't mean that 2 years from now, if you ask me, it may be the same four with a different one,
Yes.
right?
That
And
goes back to your reinvention, right?
right. Absolutely. The reinvention, I gotta tell you, lately it's become, even I have two boys, and even they go, Dad, it's kind of tough to explain to people what we really do. Because every time we think we know, you're off doing something slightly different. So I said, you know what? Just anchor your around the fact that I've been, I guess, somewhat of a career consultant,
Yes.
and and then the rest of it just kind of falls around it.
Yeah. That's
Mm.
that's big enough. That's specific enough. That's vague enough. That's all we need.
You have to remember, in our people of Indian origin diaspora, right?
Yes.
Those the vagueness doesn't really work well,
Yeah.
right? You're supposed to have that well.
Yes.
Exactly, where everybody knows, and you go boom, and it's like, no, didn't go down that route. But it's fun. It's it's fun, and hopefully it'll continue to be fun.
I'm sure it will. Sumantra, thank you so much for making the time. This has been an absolute pleasure. I look forward to continuing this relationship of you giving and I taking. And hopefully one day I'm able to give something back. And, we'll continue this, have you come back here in your reinvented self and have another talk with our audience.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me, Nathan. Take care. Bye.